Unquestionably, one of the most hyped games of the year is Battlefield 3, and already EA has done whatever they can to hype up the game and make this the ultimate competitor to the insanely popular Call of Duty franchise. But before going into how good or how bad Battlefield is, you should probably explain what makes the Battlefield series in general something else than the usual first-person shooter.
First of all, it's the scale of things. Like, Battlefield is all about big open battles with lots of people running around, vehicles, stuff blowing up, like general chaos and mayhem.
And multiplayer, right?
And multiplayer. It's first and foremost, they didn't really begin doing single player, like proper single player with campaigns and story and that until the Bad Company games. Some of the older ones had, multiplayer against bots because that was popular for a while, but mostly Battlefield has always been about multiplayer online.
Okay. So with that in mind, Battlefield 3 is both a single player and a multiplayer game.
Yes.
But let's start out with the single player.
Right.
Is it any good, or is it just an excuse for you to learn the tools that you need to apply in multiplayer?
No, it's pretty good. It's not doesn't really have anything to do with the multiplayer other than sharing the same basic controls and shooting mechanics. It's the campaign is pretty much built on the same blueprint as the Call of Duty games. As a military shooter, it's rather traditional. It has some extraordinary set pieces. Some really big, epic wow moments, but mechanics-wise, shooter-wise, it's more or less the same deal as every other game that's been out in that genre for years and years. Also, story-wise, something about terrorists and a bomb somewhere and traveling around the world with shifting viewpoints and all that. It follows the same sort of template that the Call of Duty games have already carved out since Modern Warfare.
Okay. You mentioned set pieces, and I've actually had a go at the first couple of hours of the game, and got to try out a mission where you're aboard a jet fighter, and I mean it sounds so generic, but it's probably one of the coolest sequences in a game I've tried all year, and I can't even explain why. But I'm just currently hoping that there will be more of that stuff later on in the game as well.
Yeah, there's a little more of that stuff. The jet fighter mission, you play as a sort of co-pilot weapons officer on an FA-18 attack plane. First doing dogfights where the game pilots the plane for you, but you get to lock on targets and shoot missiles. And then going into the sort of typical bombing sequence where you're reading through an infrared camera and blowing up the white dots.
Which just looks frighteningly realistic.
That whole sequence looks so incredibly good. And one thing I really liked about it was how it took its time getting going.
Yeah.
The build-up is really, really long, like walking out from the bottom of or from below deck on the carrier ship, and then getting on the plane, checking flaps and working stuff like that, and then taking off.
And just the first time you see the plane, it's just...
that looks so good.
Yeah.
And there are some tank missions later on, which are where you drive the tank yourself, so that's awesome. Other than that, it sticks mostly with the tried and true run and gun formula.
So going into the multiplayer,
Yes.
which I guess is fair to say is the main component of the game.
Oh yes.
How awesome is it?
Oh, it's so awesome. What they've done with the PC version is they've upped the player limit to 64 players, which was the same as it was back in Battlefield 2, but wasn't on Bad Company 1 and 2. They were also limited to 32 on PC. So they've upped the scale. Jet planes are back. More tanks, more explosions, more people blowing each other up, more of everything pretty much, while still retaining that really solid infantry combat that the Bad Company games had. And there's a couple of places where they really sort of push the boundaries of what you can do. And there's one map called Damavand Peak where in rush mode, where you're attacking sequences of points and then pushing back the defenders, where the ship from the second to the third base, the second base is like a helipad thing, and the third base is down in the valley, like 500 feet steep drop down there. So you have to base jump and parachute down into the base you're attacking. And just, it sounds a bit like a gimmick, but it, really adds sort of coolness to the game that's, evident in all the other maps as well, because it just has that scale and that sort of sense of, all-out warfare that the more infantry, Call of Duty is a really like corridor-based or very, tight maps, small maps, whereas, Battlefield is in like a completely different ballpark with giant maps, lots of action going on all around you and shit blowing up everywhere.
Of course the game works, but a lot has also been said about the whole Origin network and how you're able to check your stats. And
the battle log.
Battle log, sorry. How you're able to check your stats and the stats of your friends and group up.
It seems, initially it seems like a weird idea that you have to launch the PC version of the game through a website.
Yes.
But I think once you try it, it actually works really, really well, because you have the server browser in the battle log, which is a website, and finding a server, looking up who's online, who's playing, and seeing if your friends are online. All of that is so snappy and so fast. It's as easy as using maybe Google or Facebook, and the fact that you get a little pop-up in the corner when one of your friends is playing something, and you can just with one click join his game if the server is open.
It's really cool.
That's just really, really sweet, and it saves, like in other games you would have to load up the game, go to multiplayer, open the server browser, see who's online maybe, and then decide if you want to play with them. Whereas here it's like 2 clicks with the mouse and and then you're going. And also, I feel like the loading times are actually really, really fast.
Yeah.
When you join a game, it loads up most of it in the background, so you can keep your browser open, do whatever you're doing. And then once the actual game screen pops up, it's like less than a minute, 30 seconds maybe. So that's cool.
And progression and unlocks and...
They've tweaked it a little bit, I feel like, compared to Bad Company 2, where the sort of essential gadgets for each of the 4 classes, you had to unlock those. Whereas here you start the Assault Medic class starts out with the medkit from the get-go, and getting the defibrillator so you can revive fallen comrades, that takes like 10, 20 minutes maybe. The same deal goes for support, who has the ammo pack from the beginning, and the engineer has both the rocket launcher and the repair tool. And the starting weapons feel pretty nice in my opinion. It's not like you're gimped at the get-go and can't really compete. Vehicles is a slightly different matter. You have to get a couple of kills to unlock missiles and stuff, and so when at first you're just flying around in a jet with only machine guns, it's pretty easy to feel useless. But once you get going with that, you can rain down terror from above too. So progression, I feel, works pretty well, and it only takes, you started with the essentials and then you get proper upgrades for those pretty quickly. So yeah, I like that.
When talking about Battlefield 3, a lot of talk has been spent on the graphics and the sounds. And again, from my small experience with the game, both are absolutely fantastic. But you've completed the game and played a lot of multiplayer. So how does it stack up throughout?
The graphics are incredible, pretty much all the way. The animations in particular, and the lighting is actually what impresses me the most, I think. The game does a good job of in the campaign of sort of mixing it up and putting you in different places. I feel like it might be missing just that sort of aesthetic last touch, like gigantic vista just makes you drop your jaw, whatever, like Bulletstorm had. Yeah. Even though this game looks better than Bulletstorm in most regards, but I'm just missing that tiny little thing where I'm really impressed, because it has a visual style that's sort of not gritty, but like bleak and washed out colors sort of thing. But
and a lot of filters.
A lot of filters as well, and lots of lighting right in your face and stuff like that. But I mean, technically, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's probably an aesthetic choice, a creative choice, that they didn't go in that direction that I really, really love. But it looks amazing. There are very few games, if any, that look better than this right now.
Yeah, and also it's got destruction, right?
Yeah, it's got destruction. There's not that much destruction in the single player, but in multiplayer, some maps actually feel like they have less destruction than Bad Company 2. Others have just as much, if not more. There are buildings that you can totally level, and if in the Paris levels, you can't destroy most of the buildings completely. But if you fire a missile or a rocket into the side of a building where someone's hiding, most of the facade will come off, and that looks awesome.
And the sound?
Oh fuck!
sound is probably the best part. The
was gonna
sound,
say the same.
Yeah, I can't recall ever playing a game ever that had better sound than
No,
this.
it's actually, to me, it's even more impressive than the graphics.
Yeah, and I mean, DICE have really made a name for themselves in the sound department for the last couple of games. Both this and both Bad Company games and the multiplayer on Medal of Honor, which they did as well. Gun sounds and the way the sound of a gun changes in the distance. You get that when you're fighting. There's always online. There's always an ambience of explosions and gunshots going off in the background. And unlike most games, those aren't scripted. Those are the actual battles taking place elsewhere on the map. And on the Metro map, once you get down in the train tunnels, the reverb and the way that changes, it just sounds so incredible. Yeah, in my book, this is the best sounding game ever, I think.
PC owners, of course, have the luxury of being able to throw all the hardware they can at the game. But as for the console versions,
it still looks good. Certainly still looks good. For a console game, it also looks really, really great. There's a couple of differences, like online PC supports up to 64 players, console only does 24. The Xbox has this optional install to make the game prettier, but it's more like you have to do it unless otherwise the game is ugly.
it's not much of a choice.
Yeah, we only got the console versions delivered today, so we haven't had that much time with them yet. But although I've played them a bit at preview events and stuff like that, and still, I mean, obviously it's not up to the level of the PC, but it's still one of the better or great-looking games on both consoles.
So, is this the game you were hoping for? Does Battlefield 3 live up to its huge promise?
Multiplayer-wise, absolutely. The campaign feels like pretty much every other shooter I've played. It's not bad at all. It's just not that original or new or anything. But
it does come with some spectacular.
Yeah, it has some very spectacular set pieces and moments, and I had fun playing it, absolutely. But multiplayer is definitely what you should get this for, because multiplayer is amazing.